I think I need to start with a disclaimer. What I'm about to talk about may affect you. I have no way knowing now, and neither do you. The only way to find out is if you listen on. That being said, this experience has been deeply disturbing for me. I understand if you don't want to go forward reading this, but I'm also hopeful I can find someone who can offer their own insight. You have been warned. This whole thing began one morning on my way to work. See, my shift starts pretty early. I have to clock in by 6. Without doxing myself, I'll say my job is in a city and the easiest way for me to get there is by train. I live in the suburbs and our local station is pretty tiny. All this is just to make the point that usually when I get to my station it's totally deserted. In fact, I'm not even sure the train would stop there that early if it weren't for me. So then you could probably imagine my surprise when one morning I walked over to the station and saw another man sitting on a bench. Like I said, the station is small. It consists of a dim street lamp, 2 benches, and a small structure where you used to be able to buy tickets. The man was seated on the bench on the far left. The sun hadn't risen yet and the street lamp was behind me, so I couldn't make out the details of his face. What I could see was his bright white hair which seemed to glow in the surrounding darkness. I hesitated for a minute when I saw him. He was facing the tracks and made no attempt to acknowledge my presence. His face seemed fixed firmly ahead. I made my way to the other bench and gave him a polite hello. He didn't respond. Now I was really uncomfortable. Here I was alone in the dark with a complete stranger who was acting weird. The train was scheduled to arrive in just over 10 minutes. So, against my better judgment, I decided to wait it out. We sat in silence for a while. I checked my phone but kept side-eyeing him just to make sure he didn't try anything. He was as still as a mannequin with his hands folded on his lap. I jumped when he suddenly spoke. His voice was soft and raspy. "So you've seen him." Those 4 words. They are now etched into my mind. They keep me up at night, playing again and again on loop. At the time though, I didn't even know if he was talking to me. He didn't turn to look at me, he just kept staring ahead. He spoke again. Most encounter him. Very few remember him. And that was it. That was all he said. I asked him what any of that meant but he went silent. He still wouldn't look me in the eye. It all left me with an uneasy feeling. That chill that runs down your spine when someone is watching you. There was something else too, in the pit of my gut. It was like a rising sensation. I could feel myself starting to breathe heavier and my heart rate quickened. The sound of my own labored breath was thankfully interrupted by the distinct sound of the train thundering along the rails in the distance. As it came into sight, its headlight illuminated our surroundings. Still shaking, I peered over at the man's face. He looked relatively normal. He was an older man with a wrinkled face, a sharp chin and crooked nose. But it was his eyes that stood out. They didn't look strange physically, but he held them open unnaturally. He seemed to be straining his eyelids to keep them as wide as possible. It was a look of extreme pain that he held staring forward into the void. The train screeched to a stop in front of us, and I practically leapt forward to get on board. The man made no attempt to get on. The conductor blared the horn a couple times but he didn't budge. He didn't move. He didn't blink. As we began to pull away, I looked at the man one last time. There was a split second his eyes started to meet mine. Then he was out of sight. I never saw him again. I sat alone in the passenger car trying to calm myself down, but nothing was working. My symptoms kept getting worse and I was starting to feel dizzy. That's when I started getting flashes. Visceral, emotional sensations. The sound of the television playing distantly. The smell of Dad's cologne. My red striped pajamas. I felt my own eyelids become heavy. The train began to fade away, and I found myself years ago. I saw a door in front of me. I was tired. My head barely reached the knob. I pushed forward. I heard a scream. A shrill high-pitched scream. It resonated with terror. It was my own. There was something in the corner. A dark looming mass of flesh. It looked like a man. It was hairless and naked. It stood upright on its hind legs stretching from floor to ceiling. Its arms hung down to its knees. Its eyes glowed yellow in the dark. It had a gaping mouth that hung down to its chest. Without moving its legs, the creature slowly glided towards me. I was paralyzed by fear. My own screams seemed distant, like they belonged to someone else. The creature kept gliding towards me, reaching its arm out towards me. It was too late. It grasped its hands around my neck and lifted me into his mouth. Everything went black. I woke up in a hospital room. I was still shaking and disoriented. The doctor later told me that I had suffered a seizure on the train. They kept me for MRI and other tests, but they couldn't find anything. They discharged me, and I've been trying to get back to some semblance of my old life. I see a therapist now. She's supportive, but she doesn't believe the memory is real. I've talked to my parents about it too. Neither of them remember anything like the story I described. Very few remember him. I thought to myself, I've been back to the station, but I've never seen the man again. I'm not sure I want to see him again. I want answers. I want to know if what I saw was real. I want to know who the man was. That's why I came here. I'm sorry if I triggered a memory for anyone else. I gave a warning, but I know curiosity is powerful. If not, consider yourself lucky. You don't remember him.